Good afternoon. We'll now call the meeting, Tennessee Wildlife Commission to order. Welcome everyone to the meeting. We have Scott Reese. Thank you for being here, Scott. Have reports from Executive Director, as well as Wildlife, Fisheries, and Budget Committees. Looking forward to hearing those. Ms. Danette, can you please call the roll?
Jimmy Granberry,
Here.
Tommy Woods,
Here.
Monty Ballou,
Here.
Stan Butts,
Here.
Wally Childress, Bill Cox, Chris Devaney, Steve Jones, Brian McLaren, Kent Woods, Hank Wright, Chip Saltzman, Angie Box.
Here.
Madam Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you so much, Danette. With that, we're going to move into our Executive Director report. Mr. Director Jason Maxedon, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm going to do it from the podium today, if that's all right with you. I do want to say thank you, and I don't want to steal Madam Chairman Box's thunder, but thank you, staff, for the great lunch. I feel swole up here from eating all the great desserts. I did want to make an announcement. There was a tie on the honey bun cake, so I wanted to tell there was a tie on that. But thank you for the great lunch. This month, I am very excited to make an announcement, and I say very excited because we have some new staff members that I will recognize here in just a minute that are going to join us. And this is going to be what I'm going to call our executive team. So I want to read a little bit about each one of those members. And as I read your name, if you would please come up and stand and just remain standing. We're going to take a picture with the commission at the end of that. So Tori Grimes, would Tori come up please first? Tori has joined us as our new general counsel. Tori comes to TWA after a 10-year career with the Tennessee Department of Corrections, where he served as senior counsel and legislative liaison. He also brings an additional 7 years of experience as an investigator for the State Comptroller's Office. He's a native of West Tennessee. He's a lifelong fisherman and enjoys kayaking, fly fishing, and enjoying the beautiful waters of Tennessee. So give Tori a hand. Very excited to get him on board. Next, I would like to ask Senator Mike Bell to come up. So Senator Bell will be joining us as our new senior advisor for legislative affairs and policy. Senator Bell is going to come on September the 1st. He's got a little limp. He's had a little surgery here recently. Senator Bell's a lifelong sportsman and small business owner. Bell has served the last 16 years in the General Assembly, first elected to the Tennessee House District 23 in 2006, representing McMinn and Monroe counties, and was subsequently elected to the Tennessee Senate District 9 in 2010, representing Bradley, McMinn, Meigs, Monroe, and Polk counties. In addition to his regular duties as a state legislator, Senator Bell has been an active member and co-chair of the National Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus and a member of the Executive Council of the National Association of Sportsmen Caucuses. We also have a couple of familiar faces that are agency employees and have been with us for a while, stepping into the deputy director roles. So Frank Fiss, if you would come up. Frank has been promoted from Fisheries chief to deputy director over the business operations. Frank began his career with the agency 25 years ago. He started managing trout and smallmouth bass fisheries, and most recently was the chief administrator over the fisheries division. I say that because he's actually still acting in that role until this Sunday, and he's going to be presenting as fisheries chief here in just a few minutes. He managed statewide sport and commercial fisheries on 19 agency-owned lakes and 11 fish hatcheries. Brandon Ware, if you'll come up, please. So Brandon will be our new deputy director of field operations. Brandon's been with the agency for 18 years. Brandon previously served as the TWA Region 3 Wildlife Program Manager in East Tennessee. There he was responsible for coordinating and directing all wildlife management activities on 32 wildlife management areas, refuges, and other public lands throughout 24 counties, covering nearly 700,000 acres. And I don't have it on my notes, but he was also a wildlife officer and worked in the non-game section as well. I would like to also ask Miss Emily Buck to come up. Most of you have already met Emily and know her background, but Emily is our Director of Communications. And so this will be our new executive team for the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. And again, I'm very excited to get them on board. We've got regional meetings set to go around the state with our staff. We're going to start those at the end of October and roll through the months of November. We're going to go out and have listening sessions in each of the 4 regions. So looking forward to giving them a hand. I'd like that commission. If we could we get you all to kind of stand back here? I'd like to get them in front and take a picture with the full commission with the executive team. So we'll start with the duck blind update. I really wanted to touch on the results. I think most of you all have heard or seen this, but wanted to share some of this with the public as well. So I really just want to look at the total numbers that you see on your screen. Parties considered, there was 2,663 parties that were considered for the Tier 1 blind drawing system. Applicants considered was 13,834. Successful parties, 453. And successful applicants, there was 2,504 of those. Probably the number that may be a little bit surprising is how many applicants were disqualified. It was 1,170, and those would be from not meeting the license requirement. It could be from putting in for multiple parties. There's multiple examples of what it would be used for, the disqualified applicants there. Notice of intent, the total winners were 2,504. We received 2,096 responses. 49 of those said no to their notice of intent. They did not want their blind. 2,041 said yes, and then no responses, 108. Now remember, these were party sizes of 4, so there could have been applicants within that party that did not respond. That rolls into the duck blind update, and this is what probably a lot of the folks watching will want to see. This will be put out on our social media platforms early next week, but these that are going to be the leftovers, the ones that after the notice of intent process was filed, will be left to be able to go first come, first serve to our regional offices, and that will be on August 25th. But in Region 1, there were 2 blinds left. Barkley Unit 1, that was blind number 16. West Sandy, that's blind number 18. In Region 2, there were 7 blinds left. Old Hickory Unit 1 had blinds 10, 20, 31, 33, 80, and 83. And then Old Hickory Unit 2 had blind 22. Again, those will be administered at our regional facilities, first come, first serve on August the 25th. A party leader will be able to come in and sign that up, but they will continue to have 3 other members with them and have their TWRAID numbers as they sign up for those. In Region 1, Barkley had 85 attendees, Sandy 265, Gooch 126, Reelfoot 184, Tigert 65, West Sandy 60. And in Region 2, AEDC had 75, Old Hickory 110, and Cheatham 81. Overall, we heard pretty good feedback from everybody at most of those sites. There were a few vendors set up at Big Sandy. I think at Gooch, they may have had one vendor, and then the Tennessee Tech folks, a couple of areas had vendors set up. But overall, we got good feedback. There were folks that attended those in-person announcements. So I told you, I guess 2 months ago, that I wanted to come in and kind of highlight a few things that our staff are doing each month. And so I wanted to recognize, first, I wanted to recognize Robert Jean Ott. Well, let me back up. I want to recognize one of our other employees first, and I'll come back to Mr. Ott. But Ted Offerman, he's one of our Region 3 fisheries managers. Ted has been honored for an award-winning article on fish attractors. He was awarded a $121,000 grant from the National Fish Habitat Partnership for the Reservoir Habitat Project on Old Hickory. And so what we'll be able to do with that money that he was awarded is put structure out there. It'll be underwater rock piles. So congratulations to Ted. And Ted, thank you for your hard work, being able to acquire those funds so that we can put more habitat out for fisheries. I want to end with this on Mr. Robert Jean Ott. This is slightly more of a somber note that I think truly highlights how important our work is and what some of our employees do. Lieutenant Grandstaff, are you in the back? Lieutenant Colonel? All right, so Lieutenant Colonel Grandstaff had a special relationship with Robert Jean Ott. Last week, 87-year-old Vietnam veteran Robert Ott was laid to rest in Clarksville, Tennessee. He was a lifelong hunter, angler, boater, and public servant. He joined the Army at age 18 and in the Montgomery County Sheriff's Department. He spent 10 years with TWA as a part-time boating officer. One of his wishes was to be carried to the gravesite in the back of a green truck, and our officers made that happen for him and his family. Terry, would you roll to the next slide, please? He was very instrumental in Lieutenant Colonel Dale Grandstaff's career. When Lieutenant Colonel Dale Grandstaff came to the Clarksville area, Mr. Ott kind of took him under his wing, showed him around the area, and they formed this great friendship. And this is one of the do this, and Dale was able to make that happen. Very neat service. Dale shared with us that there was 3 different honor guards that were present there that celebrated the life of Mr. Ott and his accomplishments and what he had done for our country. This is the first time I think that anybody's been able to remember the agency doing something like this to be involved in a procession. So wanted to highlight that, and let's remember Mr. Ott's family in our prayers as they just continue to mourn his loss. Madam Chair, that concludes the director's report.
Thank you so much, Director. I've got a few announcements to go over. I want to first introduce you all, Mr. Chip Saltzman. He's our new commissioner appointed by Speaker of the House, Cameron Sexton, and we're happy to have him. Looking forward to working with him. Brings a lot to the table. So I'm glad to have you.
Thank you, Chair.
And we have a couple, let's see, more announcements. We have Mr. Tommy Woods has a new grandbaby born this week. Yes. Callan, correct?
Callan.
Yes.
First one.
And I believe Mr. Mike Bell also has a new grandbaby. New grandbaby? Yes, great.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Congratulations. The commission was able to attend last night to get some more education on the nuisance bear problem that's going on here in Gatlinburg. And it's a serious problem. So we're able to go and learn, and officers and staff were fantastic last night. It was good learning experience, and we just hope that we can move forward to solving a problem. I think they have some more. Tommy went this morning to I think they had a presentation with new bear-proof cans.
We had a presentation on bear-proof cans,
Yeah.
which I believe, Dan, you can correct me. I think we have 400 of those in service now in Cervera County. And we viewed the challenges we have with trash. A lot of receptacles are bear-proof, but they get full when they set trash on top of those receptacles. And it is a challenge, and it's a challenge to overcome and a challenge to educate the community. And our guys and our gals are just doing a great job in trying their best to make this situation better. It's really not the bear's fault, and it's just an educational process that's going to take a while.
Thank you, Commissioner Woods. One more announcement. I want to first brag on the staff. You all are incredible. I brag on you all a lot when you don't even know I'm doing that, but I appreciate everything y'all do. We've had a lot of changes and a lot of busy last few months, so I appreciate each one of y'all and everything you've done. I'd like to recognize Miss Susie Spriggs individually because she goes above and beyond, and I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you. You volunteered to help with when Director Maxedon extended the draw. You volunteered to help and had to sit by your computer all weekend. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, that above and beyond goes to midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning.
Sure does.
Unbelievable hours that you've been willing to put in to take up the slack. We really appreciate that very much.
Well, thank you so much. Are there any more announcements from public or the commission?
I've worn Susie out too. I'd just like to say thank you as well. Personally.
And I have one quick question. Where's Kent Woods? Do we get to call Frank Fish, or we have to go with Frank Fish now?
It's gotta say
Fizz? Frank Biz. Okay. Want to clarify that before we get to the fisheries. Okay.
Got a couple more days.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. I have no more announcements. We're going to move right into our wildlife committee. We're going to call on Chairman
Did you thank
Jones.
the people that fixed the lunch today? Did I hear
Jason
that?
did.
Okay.
But
It
thank you.
was
It
outstanding.
was wonderful.
So
Yes.
they worked hard out in the back and it was fabulous. I don't know where they got all those Dutch ovens to cook all those.
My wife
Dessert.
says life's uncertain, eat dessert
Awesome,
first.
I guarantee you.
Yes. Delicious food. Absolutely. Thank you all so much. Okay. No more announcements. We'll move on to the wildlife committee. Chairman Jones.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The only thing we have on the agenda this afternoon is Patrick Lemons. Going to talk about public input on,
Actually, act like he didn't know he was supposed to do that.
oh, he knew.
Thank you, Commissioners.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. I want to update you on the public comment we've received on the proposed Big Sandy Waterfowl Refuge. Just to update your memory on this, this proposed refuge is currently part of Big Sandy WMA. It's about 930 acres. And the proposal has us closing it to public access from November 15th to February 12th. The comment period opened on June 4th, and we've received about 21 comments. 11 of those have been against it, and 8 have been for it. I'll take any questions you may have. Commissioner Blue.
Hey, thank you. Commissioners and Patrick and Director, patience is probably not my best quality, but we thought we were trying to think outside the box. I'm not, obviously, I got more comments and quotes and calls than what we did on the survey. And it's probably close to the same. Some of them are for it. Some of them are against it. Some of them have got varying ideas of what we should do, of leaving it a walk-in area to hunt, which it's a tough area to hunt. It's a tough area to hunt just due to the mud flat and hard access and being silted in. So with that being said, I still think ducks use it. I think economically, we could make it a refuge without spending a lot of money on this certain area. I think it's adjacent to Big Sandy, where we have a lot of tier 1s, duck blinds, and Gin Creek is just down the creek where we have 2 tier 2s and several tier 1s as well. So I'm just trying to think outside the box and do something that would improve our waterfowl hunting down there. So I heard someone say this morning is we need to do it right, not do it quickly. So I think that is a good thing to be said. I would like to propose that we bump this down the road until next year. Even if we pass this today, meeting with Brad Wheat, the wildlife manager, and talking to Brad. It's going to be a lot to this as far as getting it surveyed, marking it, planning it, the flotation, the contract with TVH where we can close the waterways off. It's going to be a lot to it. So what I would like to propose is we table this, but I would like to challenge Patrick and Brad and our other wildlife managers in that area to look at this. I'm going to watch it personally this winter, see what kind of ducks we have rafted up out there, see how much hunter use we have out there, and then possibly looking at either making it a refuge next year. And at the end of duck season, February or March, we start making a plan where we will have plenty of time to implement this by November of next year. So we can either make it a refuge, big, and put a tier line on it, or we could, I don't know. I would love to look at this winter, Patrick, and develop a little better plan for us. And if we find some better land to develop a refuge on or develop more tier 1 sites between now and, I just want to make some forward progress on this and think outside the box and do something a little different. So if that's okay with everybody, that's my proposal. Let's look at it, not give up on it, but let's look at it, push it down the road, develop a plan, and then put something into action between now and maybe the spring.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Blue. Of course, you made the recommendation and asked for us to take a look at this last month.
Right.
Does the agency have any recommendations at this time? Are you comfortable with studying it?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to study it.
Okay. Any of the other committee members have any input?
Patrick, what were the range of the questions for and against on the public comment?
The folks that are for it thought it would improve hunting over a wide area. That's summarizing those 8 comments. Against it, we heard from a lot of folks that do hunt that area, and so they were regretting losing a place they got to hunt. Another interesting comment that I've seen is that although it's not a refuge right now, ducks do use it because how difficult it is to hunt. It's not hunted every day. It's hunted every opening day. It's hunted when there's a high water event. But in between those times, there's a lot of days where ducks are rafted up out there and it's performing. It's acting like a refuge right now, although we hadn't declared it that.
Thank you, Patrick. I don't know if this requires a vote to kick it down the road to next year. Can I just maybe get a consensus from the committee members that they're fine with allowing the agency to look at it for another year? Okay. All right. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you.
Steve, I would ask, I do really like Monty's comment about the opportunity to add tier 1 blinds, because that's part of our challenge to Director Maxedon as we grow the tier 1 blinds. We added 1 this year. If we can, we don't have any land, but this is certainly an opportunity to potentially look at that. So that's something to be part of the study.
I agree with that. And like we said during this discussion last month, any opportunity we have to put more landscape or more habitat on the landscape, we should take advantage of that. So that concludes this committee's report.
Thank you, Chairman Jones. Okay. I'd like to call on Committee Chair Hank Wright with Fisheries.
Like to call Frank Fiss.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to take this public opportunity to announce our public comment period that is open right now. It opened Monday, I believe, and it will be open through September 9th. At this time, we're looking for public comments on anything about proclamation overhaul. But since the interest of the commission is to do that annually, we felt like we should at least get some public comment to go into that. We will be bringing a preview of fish proclamations and rules at the September meeting, and we'll be doing a vote on proclamation at the December meeting, and hopefully a vote on rules at the January meeting. So it's going to be a pretty heavy fall, winter in fishing regulations. But I want to encourage anglers to send in their comments by email. That's our easiest way to handle them. If you want to mail it, we have a mailing address posted on the screen as well. Thank you.
Anything else?
Oh, I'm thinking about other nicknames. we might be able to work in something with like Frank Fiscal. Just think about it. All right.
I like that.
I like that. Frank Fiscal.
All right.
I think,
Thank you.
I think the commission can work with you on that. Is it- Madam Chairman, back to you.
Here. All right. Thank you, Chairman Brett. Okay. Going to move to Chairman Bill Cox
Yes, ma'am.
with budget. Thank you, sir.
Director Maxedon.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. We'll come before you today. This is when we bring our annual budget before you for hopefully approval. And I'm going to go over the budget process today. So as we go through the process, just want to remind you what we're looking at. This is where we just closed out our FY22 budget year. We're moving into FY23. We did that on July 1st. And at the end, we will ask you for approval of our FY24 budget. I start out with this word complex. We have heard from several of our partners that our budget seems complex, but it's really not that complex. And I kind of want to go through and show you a little different way of looking at our budget and kind of breaking it down into sort of a checkbook format to kind of explain that just a little bit better to you. It does different than the other state budgets. Most other state agencies get an annual appropriation of funding, and they spend that within that year, and then they get a new appropriation the next year. And if you see at the bottom, on the bottom bullet point, I say we live off of what we make. We do function a little bit different, and that's because our budget will roll over into the next year. So what we don't spend continues to be in our checkbook balance, and it goes to the next year rather than get a new appropriation amount. And when I say we live off what we make, most of our funding comes through the sale of hunting and fishing licenses. We get very little general fund or general appropriation money. And I will show you what we get here in just a minute. We get into the budget process a little bit more about how to look at our presented in this way. We have three different accounts to balance. And I call it three different checkbooks because it's easy for me. I still actually use a checkbook to balance. I don't do much electronic banking anymore, or don't do it at all. But our checkbooks look like this. You have the wildlife fund or the wildlife checkbook, the boating fund or the boating checkbook, wetlands, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second, and then the reserve. Accounts actually has a reserve, but I like to look at the reserve as sort of an account or a piggy bank, or some may say a rainy day fund. So here's what that looks like. If we break each one of these checkbooks down or each of these funds down, wildlife license sales, this is a sale of hunting license. 34% of federal funds, that's Pittman Robertson money, where we get certain matching dollars to be able to match the sale of those hunting license. And then state and other funds. This is some of the small state appropriation money we get, and then things where we generate money from like timber sales or other revenue sources that come into the state, such as farm contracts. The boating checkbook or the boating fund, 55% of this is made up through boat registrations. 25% of that match money there, similar to the wildlife fund. And then we have the marine fuel tax or gasoline tax. And then, as you all know, most of you know, we get a portion of the real estate tax money. And we use these funds to be able to buy property on maintenance of things like our wildlife management area. So one unique thing about these funding formulas is each state fund and each specific guidelines about how it can be used. So whenever we take those licenses to say Pittman Robertson money, it's usually a 75-20. Have to be able to use those funds, and we can't cross over. So we can't over from the wildlife fund to the boating fund. That would be a misappropriation of funds. So each federal fund has specific matching requirements and a time limit before it reverts back to the federal government. We rarely let any money revert back because we try to spend it all within that year or within that allotment, or we carry it forward, which I'll be talking about here in just a second. So this is what our book looks like. Again, you're going to be looking at FY21-22 estimate. So that's as we close out the FY22 year. This is basically what our checkbook balance looks like, and this is the way that we would balance that. So that first column, the July, add the income column. Beginning balance is $177,106,000. Plus the income of $149,382,945. That's our hunting, fishing license sales, the marine fuel tax, all the different money that I talked about, minus the expenses, what we put out each year for, say, WMA use and other projects of $132,119,500. And so our ending balance going in at the end of that 22 year is 194 million. And so we'll move more talking, ask you to approve here. So I want to kind of walk you through that and show you how much oversight and time goes into the budget preparation to get to this point. It's a pretty, there's a lot of staff time and a lot of sets of eyes get to look at. Ends in April of 2022. This is where we start meeting staffs and they start talking about projects that are upcoming. And you all know we changed something a year ago where we started coming to you with expansions. And the reason we wanted to do that a little bit closer to the time that we would spend that money is to get better estimates. So we came to you back in May for expansions for the FY23 year budget, and you all approved $17 million worth of expansions back in May. Most of those were big equipment items, structure. And then we start another process to this point with you in June. And this is where all of our different divisions, along with their chiefs, start reviewing their budgets and doing inputs for the FY24 year. That they come back to the director's office. We have a pretty lengthy review process. For example, the wildlife division will come in, spend a day with us. A lot of times we'll be in there 8 or 10 hours with them, going over all the projects in the wildlife division. And we do this individually with every division within the agency. Then we usually give you all a preview in the month of July where we just kind of go over some of the big projects. And then we come to you in the month of August for your approval. Tomorrow, then it will go to Finance and Administration, and we have a due to get that to them by September the 9th. So again, we function much like other state entities. The only thing different is the way our funding sources come in, but we go through all other state processes with those sets of eyes on those budgets as they look as it goes through the phase to wind up in the governor's budget. All right, so following this review in September, kind of hit on this just a little bit, but you all will approve it. We will go through F&A, and we will sit with a panel in the Finance Administration, and they will ask individual questions about our budgets. They will go the same things that you may ask. Usually they hit a lot of our big project items, and we have, if there's any money discrepancies or anything that they have questions about, we sit through with that staff. Before the legislative budget committees, there's 2 of those in the House. And once that's approved and they act upon that, then it goes back into the final budget. So let's talk about some terms to consider as we go into the actual budget. A carry forward. These are funds not spent in one fiscal year that are carried forward into the next budget year. So some examples of this will be like Buffalo Ridge that you all know. So we were budgeted for Buffalo Ridge back last year in FY22. We did not get all that money spent, so we will carry it forward into the FY23 budget, which we're in now. Duck blinds, we didn't, because we had 14 of those blinds that were going to get built this year, which are on track. Most of those, in fact, are completed, but we didn't get all that money spent in FY22 added to the current budget year. And we will be coming to you in just a minute asking for more expansions for FY23. We're going to ask to expand that budget with some more projects and really some updated costs, basically fuel, fertilizer, a lot of things that have come on board that we didn't probably budget for, enough money budgeted for back last year. Improvements, not going to have any of those for FY24 budget. We're not going to have those. We're going to wait until it gets closer, come back to you in May again and ask for expansions at that time rather than improvements for this year. All right, so the FY23 carry forward projects, I'm going to hit most of the high points, then I'll pause and let you any questions that you may have. But these are, again, are the ones that you all approved to. We didn't get most of the work completed, so we're wanting to carry those forward into FY23. I'll hit some of the bigger ones. Herb Parsons, as you all know, there's a big renovation project. Bill Dance Fishing Trail, and we asked you for $2.47 million. We are going to be coming to you. We've been working with Stream. That's the process that we have to go through for whenever we get work done, that the all state come back to us and raise the cost of that. We're not going to do that. It's added a good bit of expense, and as we get closer to that project, we will probably need to come back to you and expand the budget. But this is a big carry forward, $2.47 million. Building, I mentioned a minute ago, we did get the money spent on the actual education facility in FY22, so we're carrying it forward to 23 until we get our strategic plan finished. Jay and his crew, the engineering crew, are continuing to work on the range 137 forward into They've been moving along really good, especially with the dry work, but this is for the dirt work, the building of the ranges, the drainage, the concrete structures, the berms, a lot of that. Clean Vessel Act, this is really flow-through money. It's federal grant that comes, but money we didn't get spent. That's money that's granted to us, and then we spend that money. We didn't get that $806,000. We will get it spent in FY23. The Knoxville Suttree, it's to complete the Suttree dock in Knoxville. You all have heard about that a couple of times. Should get that completed here in the FY23 year. K9 CWD detecting, you all have heard multiple times about how we're working with the university there to detect or try to detect CWD through the use of dogs. And so that's just grant funds that we didn't get all the grant money spent in 22 carried forward to FY23. Dozers, those are some of the ones that we're acquiring from the Tennessee Division of Forestry. We're waiting on those dozers to come available, and those will be purchased from a sister agency at a cost of $133,000, and that's for 6 dozers. Shotgun replacement, you'll see that twice in there, and that's because we pulled money out of boating and some out of wildlife. Those are the 2 funds. Again, they can't cross over, but those are to outfit our officers with new shotguns. We had a contract with Remington. They're not building the 870 shotgun anymore, so we didn't get that money spent. We're carrying it forward. Money's looking at me funny, but we're trying to find another vendor and another contract to be able to get those shotguns replaced. I'm going to pause there, and if you have any specific questions, I'll try to answer them, or we'll get one of the chiefs to answer them about any specific projects.
Does anybody on the budget committee or the entire commission have any questions so far? We've had a couple of conference calls for information, and several of you have submitted questions, and I hope got them answered, but are there any questions so far? Everybody cleared? Monty?
Just one quick question. Chairman Cox and Director, you all have explained the budget. The only thing shocks me is Remington's not making the 870 anymore. What? I didn't know that.
May have to get the colonel to give you more information on that because he's been working on that. We'll catch you at the break, Monty, if that's okay.
I have a question. Going back to the revenue versus expenses slide, if we can.
You'll go back.
Yeah, about the 3rd or 4th slide.
Terry, you may have to, I'm having trouble. You may have to back me up, please, sir.
There you go. Okay, I see it now. I question if we had revenue income of 149 million versus 132, how we got a balance of 194 million, but
You're adding the 2 and then subtracting the expenses.
Yeah, you got to add both of them. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
All right, I've got a question that just, when you brought up the kind of expansion or carry forward, the number that's in the 23-24 budget is 223,000. So we've increased that by 70,000, or do we increase it by 223,000?
So, and Steph, you hit me, but basically what's happened, this is a grant. They've billed us for a portion of that money. We've paid out a part of that money to them, and this is the remainder of the funds that we will to finish the contract.
So the 223 was the beginning of the contract.
That's
and
correct.
153 is what's left. That's okay.
Carrying that forward.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Good.
All right, so we're going to talk about, before we get into the detail, I just kind of wanted to show you a broad going forward. So we're asking for 3.3 million in expansions. Imagine with supply chain issues and increased fuel costs, most of this money is going to be for this, and maintenance costs. It's 1.4 million. Building repairs are going to be at 1.1. And we've got some small tracks that we're buying for 300,000, multiple areas for new access, 222,000 in equipment, and then 250,000 in lake projects. Here's a breakdown of that to show you that better. And I'll kind of start at the top. And again, I'll probably hit most of the higher level projects, but we had an HVAC unit go out in our Region 1 office in Jackson. That's going to cost $80,000 to put a new unit in there. And you're going to see that 1100 series, the 2100 series, the 31 and the 41. These are for our regional offices and facilities there. Our ladies do a real good job of keeping their costs close, but these are for increased supplies. Utilities and the maintenance have gone up on these buildings, as you could imagine. So each of those ladies came and asked for $15,000. Real foot spraying, this is for the contract that we have there. Herbicide cost has gone up. And so this is where we could do the continued aerial herbicide maintenance on Real Lake. The Old Hickory Habitat, that's a competitive grant that was awarded from Bass Pro Foundation at 121.1. The IT security, this is funding to complete security cameras, access and equipment, and operational supplies at a couple of our buildings at a cost of $152,000. There's the $300,000. Those are the small tracts acquisition non-wetlands. That's the 6622. And again, those are access areas that Tim's worked with in the shop to be able to acquire. These should be good. These are going to be some small access areas for more boating input on some of the smaller river areas. The fish trail, these are two pretty big expenses here. You got one at $300,000, one at $250,000. This is for stocking, habitat feeders, and catfish. This was for the Bill Dance fishing trail. And then you've got the Woodhaven Lake renovation, the Akron Lake algae control. This is again where they do some of the spraying and the water quality monitoring there for those projects. Producer shop, that's the biggest shape. So we've asked to be able, this is the only real big, a lot of those we kind of pushed off waiting to see what the costs are going to do. And so we're kind of waiting expansion that we would bring you next May to see if there's any reduction in costs. We have our big projects off that may require funds like those. And then the engineering access areas, this is the budget for continued increase in operational costs and rental of heavy equipment. Equipment rather than go out and buy big dozers and move those around. Jay and his team are doing so many small jobs all across the state, the engineering crew. It's becoming more cost savings. We're saving more money to be able to have them to rent equipment delivered to the site for short-term projects. And so that money, we up the rental budget there for $260. And Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there and see if you may have any questions.
Jason, I appreciate the detail. After 3.5 years on the commission, this budget is much more easy to follow, and you brought it down to a level because I know it's very complex. But I'm curious on these expansions that you have to come to us for an expansion for something like an HVAC replacement in the middle of the summer, and that mean that it's broken and it stays broken until we approve this, or do you have some sort of contingency to allow that to be fixed for the benefit of our employees who have to continue to work in those conditions? And if not, can we put a contingency in our budget that would allow for that, or does the state require you to individually approve each individual procurement of, especially on something that, require, you can't work if you, in the middle of summer, if you don't have air conditioning. So I was just curious about that process.
That's a great question. And so typically, in order to be transparent, any big line items like that, we always bring to you all for budget approval and process. And we did, as you all, the first time I think that we've done that, last May, when we brought you that $17 million expansion, we did put a contingency in there for a lot of overages. If you remember, we came to you with $1 million expansion in wildlife alone. And it was really to take care of some of those increased costs for fuel, for fertilizer, for herbicide use, and for things like that. But that's the first time that we've really ever brought a big contingency like that before you all.
Moving forward, can you make that, especially on brick and mortar stuff, can you make that a part of the process? I mean, it just only seems, I understand Catoosa, you're building a building because they don't even have a bathroom, and I understand that doesn't make a lot of sense, but just to allow you to continue to operate and moving forward.
Yes, sir. We could do that. If you all wanted to, we could do that. And then one good point to make is with us living off what we make, if we don't spend that money would roll back into TWA's general fund for the next year. It would just go unspent like a checkbook balance.
Well, the contingency would only be if you needed it for something that allows you to continue to operate.
Yes, sir.
But this would be what you're talking about is maintenance, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but replacement of a unit like you're doing at Jackson, there's time to get that approved because you've got to bid that.
That's
Yeah.
correct.
But in the meantime, Bill, my point is,
No,
it's
I get what
broken.
you're saying.
It's
I think
broken.
it's a good
and so-
idea.
Yeah.
So they'll have contingency money for
We-
repairs. I'm not sure you don't already have some of that in there. But
We have maintenance built in for
Right.
small things, but
exactly.
for example, in Region 1, and Lisa's not here, but I can't tell you exactly what her overall budget, but she would not have the funds to do it. She don't have that kind of money in her maintenance budget to do an $80,000 central unit.
Commissioner Saltzman?
Yeah, do we have a 5-year plan for facility maintenance? Do we have a 10-year plan? I mean, obviously, you're talking about these HVACs, they've got a 15-year shelf life, 20-year shelf life. Is it in the long-term plan to go ahead and replace them in a timely manner? And within that, do we have emergency repairs? Most of the bigger organizations that I've been with have a laid out facility maintenance plan for all their buildings, their cars, their shotguns, and they have a replacement plan in place that's already kind of been overall approved at the 30,000 foot range.
Let me try to answer that, and then you can follow up. I've asked the staff or asked Jason to provide us with either a 5 or perhaps 10, but a 5-year plan for projections of exactly that. What, we don't want a license increase ever again if possible. So let's project out as far as we can. And I know it's just a projection, but we can include things like that. So if you want to follow up with that.
No, in Commissioner Saltzman, that's your question. We do not.
Okay.
And Chairman Cox had asked us to try and come up with that. And so the team will be working to do a better job with facilities maintenance. There's somebody with state parks that we've been talking to kind of piggyback on to see how that they're doing that, to get some projections. So we will have that prepared.
Great, thank you.
Is that it?
We go forward.
I have a question. So if we're looking at a continued fund like a replacement for an HVAC at one of our regional offices, would it be out of order to place $100,000 contingency fund for each region for that consideration, and that money, if not used, rolled back into the general fund?
We could do
Would
that.
that allow that unit to be replaced in a timely manner without having to get approval?
We wouldn't have to come to you all for approval. We would still have to go through the state to do that. But yes, sir.
Is that what we want to do, Mr. Chairman, or?
Well, he's already got some maintenance, but he may be building a little more, not for replacement, but for maintenance. But the replacement would take some time for specs and to bid. So we'd have time to bring it back to us for an expansion.
Well, my question is, if we have a unit that's down or not working, how do we address that issue?
What's the process? Do you have to bid that?
We will on that dollar.
I mean, is that unit completely out, shut down? They don't have air conditioning?
No, there's some issues with that unit. It's been a long-standing issue that's been needed to be repaired. It's not big enough to service that facility. They're having issues with that unit there, so it's not completely down.
We're being able to keep it functional and just need to replace.
That's correct.
Okay. So the maintenance dollars are there. We're just approving the replacement of the unit.
What I would ask is give us time to do what Commissioner Saltzman's talking about. I think if we, Chairman Cox charged us with this. I think if we can get a better overview of what our facilities may need, I think we could come back and address both the questions that both of y'all had, just knowing what we might want to actually budget. If we just jumped out and did 100,000 right now for each, I mean, that would put our budget at 400,000, which it rolls back in, but still it's going to inflate the budget that we may never get spent.
Well, and to make it easier on your team, I think I'd start out with the big items like roofing and HVAC and things of that nature, and then go down to vehicles and when's the right time to replace, when's the right time to repair, because you can get into a black hole of repairs trying to keep things running when you probably need a new truck if it's got 120,000 miles on it.
Yes, sir.
And a new shotgun after 30 years.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Okay. So this is what the FY23 overall budget looks like. If you all approve those expansions, you've already approved again the 17 million, but if you approve the expansions that we're asking for today, we would be asking, I'm going back to the little checkbook format, 149,588,600 in wild, 18,679,900 in boating, for an overall request of 168,268,500.
So my question is, with the increase in herbicides, fertilizer, diesel, all of those items that we use regularly, is the expansion that we approved enough to cover where we are going in to 23? Now, we're in a new budget period, correct?
That is correct.
Beginning July 1.
That is correct.
So we're fiscal year 23, 24.
Yes, sir. You're in 23 now, July 1.
So the expansions we approved for 23, is that for this budget period.
It is. So the ones that you approved in last May, those are in there. And so there's $1 million contingency for those costs that you just mentioned. And we do think that that will be enough.
Okay, thank you.
So all your expansions and everything we passed the 23-24 budget, all that's in there. We don't need two motions. It's all included in the 23-24 budget.
That's correct. So what you would vote on tomorrow will be the FY23 expansions. And then I'm about to show you the FY24 budget. So
Okay.
you would be voting for the approval of it as well.
So going into that, then my question, my last one, is do we anticipate any more increases for habitat work, whether it be herbicides, whether it be contract work, whether it be for extra projects? Are we covered, or do we need to budget some more money for habitat on some of our WMAs where we want to look at increased habitat expansion or maintenance?
I think we are
I
well
think they
covered.
put that
Mr.
in the
Bud.
budget already.
You all were gracious enough to give us 500,000 for habitat work last year. And so right now, we're pretty well maxed out at what we could do with what we have personnel wise. And we did not get any at the director's office level when we asked for expansions and improvements from the field staff. None of the field staff came asking for any more money associated with those habitat
Well,
projects.
and I guess my question would be in relation to that is, with our staff already challenged with the number of hours that they have in a day, do we have money budgeted for contract work to ease the load of our staff?
So we're
Maybe
doing,
to do some of the habitat work that could be done in addition to everything that's required of them?
yes, sir. And we are doing both. So we're doing a good bit of contract work now. So like the spraying, all the aerial herbicide we're doing aerial herbicide work on North Cumberland. We've got it on several different WMAs. We're doing some contract work with the Division of Forestry to do burning. So we're really capitalizing both ways right now. with what
So
we
that
have.
500,000 is adequate?
It has been so far, yes, sir.
Director, if you'd like more detail, Wally Akins is ready for that.
Yeah, we asked Wally to be prepped in case that question came, but he was in charge of doing the contracts with that 500,000. We can have him come to the microphone if you'd like more clarification or detail there.
You want that?
Yeah, I think
Yes, Commissioners, we, to start with, our overall supply budget for WMA statewide is about $860,000 just for supplies. I want to also remind y'all that $153,000 was appropriated surrounding the quail research project to use on 3 WMAs. So we're utilizing those funds last year and this fiscal year. This fiscal year, we have $500,000, as Director Maxedon mentioned. So we are operating basically on a $653,000 budget just for quail management. The quail team identified projects that came from our WMA managers. And so, we're utilizing all those funds. I will say that some managers didn't get everything they asked for, but this year, I think we're going to it's a good test run, so to speak, on what we can spend with existing personnel. And I think we're about at the maximum that we can spend in a particular fiscal year. We would like to use this year as, like I said, a test run. Come March of next year during the normal budget cycle, if we do think we could use more funds and utilize those funds adequately, we could come with a budget expansion at that time.
So on machines like beacons and prime techs and things that we could utilize for habitat management, we're good with that in that budget?
Yes, sir. I think so this year because we are using, as Director Maxedon also said, a lot of the contract work for aerial herbicide, the mulching is done by contract. A lot of the prescribed firework is done by contract. So, and we're also seeking other avenues through partnerships to become more, to increase our capacity, become more efficient. So, yeah.
Thank you.
I think what we've asked them last year, because we had we had surplus money that we needed to upgrade and do everything that we hadn't been doing for 20 years and try to get some of that done. And what the director's saying is that right now, the reason he's not projecting any additional money next year is because we got all we can spend, all we can do, and we've got to catch their breath. So I think they've asked for and gotten everything that they can do. Is that right? Okay, good.
That's correct. Ready?
Yep.
All right, let me back up. Failed to do. All right, Terry, help me again. Let's stop right there. All right, so look over on the right-hand side. One thing that is going to be different, that's probably in your budget book. So when we got our budget from Finance Administration week before last, if you look at state general fund money, we receive about 300,000, and that's from the ammo tax money. That's all the general fund money that the Wildlife Agency gets from the state. You'll see 12,518,000 in there. That is for Lake Halford and the operation cost of Lake Halford. And so $11.2 million was put into our fund. Deputy Director Fisk was working with them yesterday, and they're having to fill out a grant, and they were able to get that grant filled out. So that money should be leaving us here pretty soon. There's also a little over 900,000 that was appropriated for that. Now that 900,000 actually came from our budget, from within TWRA's general fund money, to be able to go to fund the salaries, positions, and the work that's going to be completed there. And there will be 350,000 a year that will be spent, or that's what we have projected to be spent moving forward with that project. But I just wanted to clarify why that number might look different there. Any questions on that? All right, moving into the FY24 budget. Really, you're not going to see any improvement there. This is all you're going to see on the FY24 budget. All those supply monies, the operational costs, and everything that you got to come back next May with expansions. Again, ask the staff. I thought it would be closer to time when that money would be spent, and we would have a better knowing how much we would need for different projects that comes at that time. But honestly, you equipment over the last couple of years, we're in pretty good shape equipment wise. There may be some infrastructure money that we come to you and ask you for in May, and then there will be grants that we get that are typically flow through money. But to summarize this, if you look at our wildlife fund, we're asking for $109,773,400, $16,011,300 in boating, for an overall ask of $125,784,700. Go back over to that state general fund source. We've got to correct that. That money actually will be about $300,000. It showed that $900,000 in there for Finance Administration, but we'll make that adjustment. That money is still in our budget, but it will be rather than the state general fund item. Mr. Chairman, that concludes the budget proposal.
Thank you, Director. I'd like to thank the staff, and we've had some long conversations and phone calls and meetings, and several people attended for all the work you've done. You've tried to simplify it, and I understand you're going to try to do more next year to make it more lay friendly. But I'd like to thank all of you guys for the hard work. I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget.
Can I make a-
Oh,
No, go ahead,
discussion. I'm
get
gonna
you a
the
second.
motion.
Get you a second.
So moved.
Discussion.
To follow up on your heels, Chairman Cox, I too would like to commend the staff on what you've done. I think the budget is much simpler. The only question I've got is last year we had I don't know, maybe a little bit longer than usual meeting because you said there were going to be some additional personnel, and I didn't want to pass a budget without those personnel reflected in it. You're not going to have another report after this. This is it, right?
This is it.
And I think I think the whole doing the expansions once a year, sometimes twice a year, has worked out really well, made it a lot easier for me as a commissioner to follow along with the budget. And it just seems much more organized, much more straightforward. So I'm really happy with the strides we've made in the last year. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank our staff as well while I'm up here. They put a lot of long hours and hard work into preparing this, and we're already working. Ken and Frank and I are already working on a way to change the budget book up for next year. It'll look a little bit different when you all get that. The items a little bit different, maybe to be a little bit explained a little bit easier for that. But thank the staff very much. Appreciate it.
With our new advisor coming on board and liaison, then he's given us a lot of questions about budget, so maybe he can help us expedite that when we present it to the committee. So I'm counting on that.
I'm sure his input will be appreciated. Any other questions?
Yeah, as we work forward, Jason, yesterday, some of the commissioners and a lot of the staff attended the Terry and Jane Lewis dedication to the new viewing tower for the elk tower at Hatfield Knob. And they talked a lot about the process of how they got to where they were. And they said basically phase one was complete and there was a phase two. And I think we've talked briefly about it, but I'd like to challenge the staff as you work towards those expansions for next year, that you come up with a means and methods to participate and help that phase two process along. Because I think it's very important that that is a fully complete project for a lot of reasons. And we just challenge you to come up with those numbers as we work forward.
Yes, sir. I met with our chief of engineering, Jay McClellan, and we will be working with Cora to address that, and we will get you some figures on that coming forward.
And I understand Jay's not real busy. He needs something to do.
Jay is probably our most traveled employee across the state.
Any other input, discussion, any input or discussion, questions from the audience? From the committee, I'll take a vote. All in favor of approving the budget, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. We'll recommend it to the commission tomorrow.
Ken Tarkington?
Dang, I thought I could get by without having to do Ken. Sorry, Ken, didn't mean to disrespect you. There you go. Sorry. Of fiscal year 22. At the top of the page, we've identified through that point in time, we've actually over collected our projected registration income by approximately $70,000, and our expense to the budget is right at 49% of the total year. Both in boating and in wildlife, there's a lot, as you've seen, of carry forward projects that were either not completed or not able to be paid that were carried forward into this year. And that's one reason the total expense is at 50% through May. The Wildlife Fund in the middle of the page, the collections have exceeded the projections by approximately 4%. And the expense to budget is approximately 60. On the bottom of the page, Wetlands Acquisition Fund has approximately $16.7 million balance. And on the second page, or the last slide, or rather the reserve balances are the SPIF rate at that point in time was at 0.68%. It's now at 1. It's continuing to increase each month. Comments?
At what point do our transfer to the trust?
we haven't voted to do that yet.
I thought we did.
No, we're still discussing what the risk tolerance is and get a recommendation and counsel from professionals and get a recommendation to the committee about what we do about that. We haven't brought that to the entire commission yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we're through now. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Is there any further business to conduct? Go
I
ahead.
have one thing that we don't have a wildlife committee tomorrow. I discussed a month ago or 2 months ago about year-round raccoon hunting. And the reason we didn't is because of the possible conflict with cubs and poults. Come to find out, the training season's open all year. So I brought this up to staff, and they, instead of me wanting to do something today, I'd like to give the staff a little time to think about that. If I came back in September with that proposal, I'd like to get some biological input from them before I make that proposal. So just to go on the record, I may bring that back up in September. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Cox. Any more announcements from the commission? Announcements from staff or the public? Okay. Hearing none. We have a motion to adjourn. So moved. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you.